Hello!
Hola. Konnichiwa.
We are here. We're doing this more frequently, yes?
Yes.
Progress is being
We're
made.
on a bi-weekly kind of schedule.
Eventually it'll be weekly again.
Eventually, yes.
We're getting there.
We are.
So,
Today, we are discussing
comics.
and their adaptations. In other words, we just wanted to talk about Marvel and the Umbrella Academy again. So there are going to be spoilers for both of those things. We are
every Marvel movie, probably.
we are caught up in the MCU, so there's probably gonna be Endgame / Far From Home spoilers.
Yeah.
Probably. And we're spoiling the Umbrella Academy
Both
TV show and the comics. We're spoiling a bunch of the Marvel comics, but they're all wild and out anyway, so like, you know. It's not like there's like a set. It's a lot harder to truly be spoiled with Marvel comics than it is for like Umbrella Academy. But yeah, we've been talking a lot about, as we've gotten more into Marvel comics, we've been talking a lot about the differences and like the way that people go through it. So we thought it'd be fun to talk about.
We are still kind of new to the comic book world.
Yes.
Especially with, like, Marvel, because the Umbrella Academy, there's only, like, 2 volumes, and we've read all of them, so.
Yeah, can you hear me?
So we know what's happening with that. But with the Marvel comics, we're not exactly, like, experts on those yet.
No. I'm still not used to Aunt May being old.
Oh, yeah. It makes more sense for her to be younger.
But it really does. I mean, I know he's, like, older in the comics than he is in the MCU.
But he's, like, 20-something.
But he's, like, 20-something. Why is his aunt, like, 95? Like, how old were his parents? How much older than his parents is Aunt May?
I mean, it's, like... like, you could have an aunt that's really old, but, like, it makes... People like to complain about young Aunt May, but, like, it makes way more sense.
Especially since he's, like, 15 in the MCU.
Yeah, like she's his aunt, not like, his grandmother.
Yeah. Like, of course she's in, like, her 30s / early 40s.
Yeah.
Christ.
Makes much more sense.
Anyway. That's one difference.
There's a difference. A pretty small and inconsequential difference.
You're very correct.
Overall.
Yeah, but one thing about adaptations of comics is that they're always just toned the fuck down.
Oh, yeah.
They're just like, comics are just absolutely off the walls.
They're really cheesy. Their pacing is like... It's like their pacing just, like, injected an entire case of Red Bull into its veins.
It's like, there's just everything happening so fast. They're like, they're either, like, cheesy to the extreme or, like, hella dark, and there's no in between.
Even the dark ones are still kind of, like, cheesy in that, like, this is sci-fi, but all the science and is very, like, pseudoscience.
Yes, it's all just, like, extremely whack, and then in adaptations, especially in, like, the MCU, they're like, okay, we're going to choose something that makes sense, and we're just gonna go in one direction instead of 25 directions, and people are going to be able to understand what's happening.
Yeah, that's another thing about comics, which is probably just because we haven't been, like, following them since, like, the beginning. So we don't know. So we're just sort of jumping in the middle, but there's, like, a lot of shit that just sort of is, and you have to, like, pick up.
Yeah, I mean, nothing that, like, at least nothing so far that's made me be like, oh, I have no idea what's going on. But, like, it's, you know, be helpful with context, especially in, like, the comic I'm reading right now. It's a Spider-Man comic. It's like, they really just kind of, like, threw you into it.
Really, I thought that one had basically most of the context that you would need.
Well, yeah, it's like it's one thing about comics that I've noticed, both in the Civil War comic that I read and the Spider-Man comic. It's like they'll just like have an issue, and then like have to give you this like whole page of context. Like they don't, like, I remember especially in Civil War, it was like there was like nothing happening, and then when something actually did happen, they didn't show it. They just told you what happened in like 3 paragraphs.
Might have been because of like we read the Civil War comic, but because that one was like a huge thing spanning over a lot of Marvel comics, it might have just been like the collection of them that we got. Mm-hmm. I was under the impression it was like all of it, but like most of it was just explained to you in like a page in front of one of the issues, and it was like, here's a couple paragraphs about what's been happening.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it might just be because of, like, you know, we didn't read every single comic. You know, for all the superheroes. But even that aside, it feels like the collections are really weird. Because it's like, here, have this collection of the entire Civil War thing. And then the only thing that was actually important was just, like, told through you. Like, there's, like, only, like, 2, maybe 3 issues in the whole thing. And then, like, one of the issues where something actually important happened just wasn't in the collection. And then with the Spider-Man comic I'm reading right now, it's like, throughout the whole thing, he's like, oh, Mary Jane is dead. My wife is dead. This is so sad. And it's like, okay, that's thing. And they, like, kind of, like, don't really tell you, like, how she died. But, you know, like, you don't really need to know that. And then at the end, like, in the issue of it that I'm reading right now, it's just, like, Peter Parker assumed that Mary Jane was dead, but actually she was kidnapped by this guy that's trying to become Spider-Man. And now he's trying to become he lured Spider-Man here using MJ, and it's just like, you didn't want to show me that? You're just gonna tell me that part? And then they throw you into it, and it's like, he knows Mary Jane's alive, and he's fighting this dude, and it's like, why wouldn't you put that in there?
Yeah, why'd you just skip, like, one of the most climactic? And it's not even, like, you know, like, the parts that, like, they do include are, like, good.
Yeah.
And entertaining. It's just, like, a weird which ones they choose.
It's like they just purposefully leave out the ones that are, like, the most climactic. And it's like, why? It doesn't make any sense.
But anyway, also, after they've been around a while, like, I've noticed this with, like, Marvel comics. The one, and maybe probably, like, other superhero comics, too, but it's, like, I haven't read many of those. It's, like, once it's, like, character that's been around for, like, years, it's just, like, everything ever has happened to them.
Oh, literally everything that could have ever possibly
like,
happened.
Anything you can imagine happening to them, and probably like 25 things you can't
everyone
have happened to them.
In the Marvel comics, everyone has faced every villain. Everyone has teamed up with every hero. Everyone has hooked up with literally every character. Everyone has died and been replaced with a different guy, and died and been resurrected, and died and been replaced by an AI, and died but like not really, and been cloned and possessed and turned evil. Literally everything that is possible in the realm of imagination to happen to someone has happened to them. It's absolutely off the walls.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense at all. Which again is why when they make the movies, they have to be a little bit more grounded. Choose like one version of something to happen.
Yeah.
One continuity.
Except Marvel has that show coming out called What If, and I think that's just gonna be them going buck wild.
Perhaps so, but as of right now...
But I don't think all that's gonna be, like, canon or anything. I think it's just gonna be, like, a fun little
spin-off
thing.
type of thing.
Yeah, fun spin-off thing.
As of right now, it's like, okay, Nick Fury hasn't been killed and replaced by a robot. And...
In the comics he was, though.
Yeah. He also went from looking like J. Jonah Jameson to, like, Samuel L. Jackson in the comics, so...
You know, it's just, I think it's just what happens when you let when like decades pass and you let a bunch of different writers and artists all have their own take on things, and then you can't even, and it's all canon, and you can't even tell, like with Spider-Man comics, there's like some that I read where he's like, you know, a photographer for the Daily Bugle, and like, that he talks about like Gwen and MJ quite a lot, and then I've also read ones where he's like, leads like a tech company, and, like, those characters are just never mentioned ever. So it's, like, I don't know if, like, those are two different, like, timelines, or...
Yeah, it's...
Or if he just never talks about anyone he used to know, ever.
And then in the MCU, you know, they take out that little bit of being, like, what the fuck? And they're like, he is a high school student. MJ is the love interest.
If you want to get into superhero media, I'd say just movies are probably easier.
It's much easier to start with the movies, and then if you really like it and want more, to check out some comics, and then just be, like, prepared to be confused.
Because, like, the movies, even though there's, like, so many of them, they've done a pretty good job, like, being clear about, like, the timelines and continuity and stuff.
Yeah. It's, you know... They just are good at having a game plan. They, you know, take things from the comics but don't follow it exactly. They make, you know, things a little less off the walls, a little bit easier for the average person to understand, because, like, it's kind of hard to get into comics if you're not used to them, because, like, when we first started getting into them, we were, like, started reading the Doctor Strange comics and, like, the Umbrella Academy, and just, like, the pacing is so much different than, like, any other media that I've, like, ever been involved in.
It's just, the pacing is just on crack.
It's just, the comics are just on crack all the time. Everyone is a crackhead. All the writers, all the artists, all the characters.
Especially with the Umbrella Academy.
Oh, yeah. But it's like in the Umbrella Academy, some of them were, like, actually crackheads.
The pacing is just off the walls, so, like, it takes some... Like, when I first read, like, I think it was the True Lives of the Fabulous Killers, I was like, oh, it's pretty good, but the pacing's kind of weird. Mm-hmm. But then, like, I read more comics, and I was like, oh, that's just how they are. That's not, like, a writing thing. That's just the way comics are written.
Yeah, we're getting used to it now, but I feel like, and part of it might just be because, you know, the average person grows up watching movies, but maybe not comic books.
And reading books.
Yeah, and reading
like
books,
novels.
But it's just, if you haven't been reading comics for a really long time, it feels very, like,
jarring.
It's very jarring. It's very, like, not intuitive.
But
like,
you get used to it.
You get used to it, and there's some really good storylines and really good, like, characters and dialogue and stuff. You just gotta, like, get used to how absolutely batshit everything is.
The pacing, the storylines. Again, anything... Like, some of the storylines are, like, more normal, but, like, also everything has happened. Mm-hmm. To every character.
Yeah.
So there's
I feel like with this, it's like this podcast is going to be like, it's a little bit backwards because we're talking like comics to adaptations, but like at least with Marvel, we're like talking about going from the movies to the comics because that's what we started.
I was just like comics versus adaptations.
Yeah, that's true.
So like we're just comparing.
That's true.
We're just comparing. We love them both.
They're both very good. We're just
comparing.
Yes. Another thing I've noticed is that, other than, like, the pacing being adjusted, the adaptations are just always beefed to hell. Because, like, part of it is because comics are fast-paced. Like, they're fast-paced, and they're short, and they're very, like, to the point. They're like, go, go, go. Like you were saying this, it's like, go, go, go. There's no time for subplots. There's no time for this. You just gotta get this done in 22 pages. Let's go. So then when you adjust, the plot and the pacing for, like, a movie or a TV show, you suddenly have, like, hours you need to fill that the comics just don't have.
You suddenly have, like, the most bare bones plot things, which was why, like, for instance, in the Umbrella Academy, season 1 seemed to be based off of Apocalypse Suite, which is the first story arc, but it was actually a mashup of the first 2 volumes, Apocalypse Suite and Dallas, because Apocalypse Suite would not have given them enough plot to fill up 10 episodes.
Yeah, so it's like, you gotta take some things from different parts of the comics, like they did in the Umbrella Academy, or also like they did in both Marvel and the Umbrella Academy. Just add in more subplots, more development. Like, especially in the Umbrella Academy, it's like there's, like, suddenly, like, way more so than in the comics, which I love, by the way, so this isn't a slant at the comics. It's like, there's way more, like, attention to, like, Allison and her daughter, Allison and Luther, unfortunately.
Yeah, kind of like how they just sort of skim over that in the comics, usually.
They just, like, have, like, 2 panels, and then you're just like, what the fuck?
And then they just never mention it again.
Yeah, and then, like, Klaus's drug addiction, and, like, the development of his power, because they really nerfed him in the TV show.
They nerfed the hell out of him.
Klaus and Dave, and then, like, Hazel and Cha-Cha are, like,
Dave
actual...
didn't even exist in the
No,
comics.
he didn't
They
exist
just
in the
added
comics.
that in.
At least, well, we're not totally up to date with the Umbrella Academy, but we've seen the part where he went back in time to Vietnam, so unless he goes back later on,
or
Dave
they, like,
doesn't
didn't
exist.
just mention it.
They just didn't mention
They
it.
kind of, like, didn't really give you much on what Klaus was up to all that time.
Yeah, it was like, and then Hazel and Cha-Cha are, like, actual characters with, like, motivations. Hazel has, like, a love interest, which is really cute and well done. Instead of just being these 2 fucking crackheads who are like, let's nuke the world. I wonder what it will feel like to have my flesh melt off.
And then they die.
And then
They're in
just die.
it for, like, 5 pages and then they die.
And then they're, like, major characters in the TV show. So it's like, I enjoy both versions. For different reasons. I'm a very, like, character-focused person. I care more about the development and, like, relationships between characters than, like, the plot, usually. Like, the plot, for me, is, like, a way for the characters to develop and interact.
Yeah. It's just
instead of
something interesting for them to do.
Yeah, instead of, like, the characters being a way to push the plot forward, it's kind of, like, the other way around, and that's how I like it. So I do really enjoy the TV show giving this more, like, development.
But the comics
are just fun, dude. They're just so, like, off the walls, absolutely bat shit. It's so...
It's
so
like the
great.
characters are fun in the comics too. They just, like, don't get any character development. They're all just a bunch of bitter, jaded assholes who don't care about literally anyone or anything getting dragged. And they just, like, will very reluctantly try to save the world because they're like, I don't want to die, I guess.
Yeah, like, everyone in the comic is just, like, in the show, they're not, like, very nice to each other, but, like, sometimes they are, and you can tell, they care about things.
each other on some
Yeah,
level.
and they care about other people, but in the comic, they're just kind of, like, huge dicks, and they just all hate each other and, like, want nothing to do with each other. They're just like, fuck you, and fuck everything you stand for, and fuck this house, but... it's just, like, I enjoy them both immensely, but for, like, different reasons. And, both can be good. Like, the Umbrella Academy, it's, like, in the comic, it's, like, a comic but on crack. This is a really bad segue.
Okay, the show is like a TV show on crack, and then the comic is like the TV show on crack. It's like,
well, like the way that we were talking about it before, it's like this kind of more has to do with like less with like what we were talking about before, and more with like toning things down. But like, the comic is weird for a comic. Like, it's like way weirder than most comics are. So then when you take it into a TV show, they had to adjust it so that it was weird for a TV show. Because if it was as weird as it is in the comic, people that haven't read the comic and are just watching the TV show would be like, what the fuck? Because again, comics are weird and you have to get used to them. And if all the batshit, like, fast-paced crackhead energy was, like, funneled into the TV show,
it'd be like one episode long.
It'd be like one episode long, and nobody that wasn't used to how the comics are would be like, what the fuck did I just watch? This doesn't make any goddamn sense. What's happening? So it's like, they had to make it proportionally weird for the medium that it's in, you know?
Yeah, which means they toned it down.
Which means they toned it way down, but it's still a really weird TV show.
Comics are kind of like, you know, one of the weirdest forms of media I've ever read I've ever consumed in my whole life.
Yes.
And then the Umbrella Academy is even weirder than most comic books.
It's just absolutely off the walls. I highly recommend. You know, it's so good.
After that stellar selling point.
But yeah, it's like
Dallas is especially weird.
Like the Apocalypse. I don't know if it's just because I'm used to the Apocalypse Suite, but like Dallas, I was just kind of like, what the fuck?
Apocalypse Suite is pretty weird, but like you're like, yeah, this is like a coherent story. But like you understand what's going on. And then in Dallas they were like, let's have the three of our characters go back in time and resurrect a mummy and then fight the mummy and then go back into and then just go straight back to where they were before.
That's even like a watered down version. Like, let's send three characters back to Vietnam in like the 60s. Let's have one of them join the army. Not Klaus, by the way, which is what happened in the show.
If you've just watched the show and haven't read the comic, it wasn't Klaus. Klaus had nothing to do with that.
Let one of them live in the jungle like a crazed hermit for 3 years, and let the other one open a strip club to build a time machine. Can you guess which one did that? Who needs to develop Klaus's character so you see his softer side and give him a reason to want to stay sober when you can have him open a strip club in Vietnam and like obtain a baby in undisclosed ways?
Yeah. It's like it actually, like, at first it was focusing on Diego, who joined the army, and then he was like,
which is much more in character for Diego than it is for Klaus. Like, in the TV show, he was just kind of, like, yelled at, and he was like, alright! And so he ended up in the middle of a military camp, and then someone yelled at him, and he was just kind of like, okay, just stop yelling at me, and then he was just like, ooh, this dude cute, I'ma stay. Which is on brand for him, but when that's not, you know, part of the comic, it makes much more sense for Diego to be the one to join.
So then Diego is leading a unit of people who's just dragging a fucking mummy.
Yeah.
And then Luther's living in the woods, I guess.
Yeah.
And then like, Klaus resurrects the mummy for him because they got attacked. And then the mummy's suddenly, like, giant now for no reason whatsoever. Then Luther comes out of the jungle to fight the mummy. And then Diego's like, you ruined our plan, you wasted the mummy, and then they just leave, and then Klaus is like, hey, I have this strip club to earn money to build a time machine.
It's called Spookies.
Anyway, and he also, the whole time, he was just carrying a baby, and they never explained where he got it. The only time they even mentioned it was when Luther was like, "Is that your baby?" And Cuz is like, "Yep," and that's it. That's...
he was just, like, had, like, the baby in, like, one of those baby holder harnesses, and then they was just, like, he just gave it to an old lady and then fucked back off to the future, and literally the only thing they ever said about it was, like, is that your baby? And he was just like, yep.
What else would it be?
Think I stole a baby? But it's like, maybe you did, Klaus. I would pretty much expect you to steal a baby.
And that's basically what the whole comic is like.
Yeah, that's basically, if you had to sum up the whole thing in, like, one sequence of events, that would pretty much be the best way to do it.
The whole comic is like that.
Absolutely whack. So the TV show kind of toned that down, kind of made it make a little bit more sense.
Just a little bit.
They did send Klaus back in time, but instead he was the one that joined the military, and then he fell in love, and then when his beloved died, he was like, you know, had a motivation to stay sober so that he could use his powers to see him again.
Also, he, in the comics, it's like not a thing. Like, he doesn't, the drugs don't stop his powers from working. Wearing shoes stops his powers from working.
Yeah.
That's his, like, that's how he can turn his powers off, by putting on shoes.
Yeah. Again, he's also, like, way more hench in the comics. Like, not physically, but, like, his powers are, like, way hench.
He can, in, like,
he
the
can
show,
talk
they're
to
like,
the
he
dead.
can talk to the dead.
Yeah. Maybe manifest them if he can manifest them if he tries hard enough, and, like, then they're just, like, a weird ghost thing. And then the comics, it's just, like, he can talk to the dead and be possessed by their spirit, kind of, like, channel them, you know? And then he can also use telekinesis and, like, fucking, I don't know. Like,
possess people.
Yeah, he can possess people and, like, do this weird thing with technology where I guess he kind of, like, channels himself through, like, TVs and
like,
radios and stuff. Like,
he can just talk to people through, like, radios and TVs and...
He's kind of like 11. Like, he just kind of, like...
whatever.
Like, he can just kind of do things, and they all have, like, a similar aesthetic. Like, they all feel like they fit together, but they don't really give you an explanation for, like, what they are and what their limits are. They're just like, they can just do it. I don't fucking know. Fuck you. It's pretty great. What else was I gonna say? Oh yeah, in the comics, there's just no happiness. No one's happy.
In what comics?
Oh.
Yeah,
Like,
in Marvel Comics specifically, the movies are always pretty lighthearted. Like, aside from, like, Infinity War...
an Endgame.
And even Endgame was lighthearted for, like, a good chunk of it.
Yeah, it's like the sad things happen to them, and, like, you know, sometimes characters, like, die and stuff.
But
But most
they
of the time,
go through some shit.
They
Sometimes.
go through some shit. But it's like, they're optimistic all around, you know? Like, you feel like it's like a goofy, fun movie, and, you know, the characters can be troubled, but, like, you overall get the feeling that, you know, they're not, like, suffering. They just have, like, problems, you know?
It's like some, like... You know, there's some, like, tragic stuff that happens to a lot of them. A lot of them go through a lot of shit, to be honest. But, like, you get the sense that generally they're pretty, like, happy.
Yeah.
Like, most of the time.
It's not the case.
In the comics, however, they're a lot darker and everything sucks for everyone all the time, apparently.
Yeah, like, everything just sucks all the time. Everyone's parents are, like, abusive or dead. Those are the only two options.
Oh, you have one option. Pick one.
Yeah, they can either be, well, actually, sometimes they're both.
Yeah, pick one or take both.
Yeah, they're either dead, abusive, or both. Either way, you're not getting a good situation. Like, Tony's like an alcoholic, like...
Yeah.
Let him rest. Let them all rest. Peter's life sucks so bad.
Yeah, and, like, you know, the movies, especially the MCU ones, we've seen the other Spider-Man movies, but not in like a really long time. So we're just gonna talk about the MCU Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Right now. In those movies, it's like, some shit has happened to him. Like, his parents are dead.
Uncle Ben is dead.
If he even existed, they
I
never
don't know,
talk
did
about
they ever
it.
mention
Did they just like, Aunt May's just single. Maybe she's just single. Maybe they know it was Uncle Ben. I don't know things.
Maybe they were like, let's just have his father figure be Tony instead. Everyone knows about Uncle Ben already.
But some shit happens to him. Like, again, his parents are dead. And then, like, Tony dies. And that sucks.
Yeah.
And then, like, he really went through it and Far From Home, to be honest.
Yeah,
but like, generally, you get the sense that he's pretty happy most of the time.
Like, he's optimistic. He knows he's doing the right thing. He has people that love him, and he feels like, he knows he's doing the right thing. He has people that love him, and even though he's had bad things happen to him, that he's gonna, like, get through it, And
like,
that he's generally, like a happy
human.
guy.
A human. Like, bad things happen, and you go through times when you're not that happy, but, like, then everything goes back to normal, and you're fine. And that's, like, this sense you get from most of these characters. Like, they go through shit, probably more shit than people, like, than they deserve, and definitely more shit than most people will have to deal with.
But, like, they're gonna get through it,
they're not
tough.
Miserable. Their life isn't, like, miserable all the time.
But then it is in the comics. Like, Peter, it's like, his parents are dead, his uncle is dead, his wife is dead, his child is dead, his best friend is dead, everything sucks all the time. He has no money. His job sucks. He's got, like, a piece of moldy cheese, and that's it. That's all his food. He literally just gets pounded into the ground and all the time, and he's so tired all the time, and, like, all of his bad guys, like, psychologically torture him, and he just deserves a break, like, Jesus Christ.
Every Spider-Man comic can just be summed up as, Peter deserves a break, but he isn't going to get one.
It's like,
why?
What did he do to deserve this? Ugh. Yeah, there's just, like, literally, like, just no one's happy ever. I can't think of, like, like, Peter quips a lot in the comics, but it's like, I'm thinking about general overarching plot, like, the general plot lines of, like, every comic I've read, and I'm thinking, like, are they happy? And the answer is no.
Generally.
The Doctor Strange comics are pretty good.
They're also like, a pretty good example of that.
Well,
somewhat. He does say, I will say this one is a little bit more optimistic, because he does say in, like, we have, like, 4 Doctor Strange comics.
They're, like,
a
collection.
Volumes.
Yeah, volumes.
Not, like, 4 singular. It's just, like, 4 volumes that all kind of, like, they're all different storylines, but they all, like, lead into each other. Like,
yeah.
Like, we got them in order for once.
Yeah.
But... And it's, like, in the beginning of, like, the first one, which I think is called The Way of the Weird.
Yeah.
He says he loves being Doctor Strange. And he loves being, like, a wizard in the Sorcerer Supreme. So that's encouraging. He seems like he's...
Yeah, like, Peter doesn't even, like, really like being Spider-Man
He's like, remember
anymore.
when I was a teenager and, like, this was actually fun?
Good times, am I right, lads? But, like, Doctor Strange kind of has it more, like, in the movies. Like, he goes through it, for sure. But, like, he's still, like, I'm still having a good time. I still like being Doctor Strange.
His first movie was literally about his life kind of going to shit, but then he becomes a wizard and he's like, hey, this is cool, I like this.
Yeah, it's like he's in the comics for Doctor Strange, at least the ones that we've read, are a lot more upbeat. And then, of course, like, the old comics, like the 1970s one, are just goofy and dumb and cheesy.
They used to be, like, goofy and just... like, scream laughing Goofy. And not, like, maybe in, like, an intentional way.
Scene of incredible violence. It's Iron Man bonking his head against his force field like 20 times instead of using the lasers that he canically has. God, what a dumbass. Love it.
He just thought it would be a good idea to try just using brute force first. Anyway.
But yeah, like, other than Doctor Strange, it's, like, literally...
But,
and
like,
that's, like, even
in,
debatable with Doctor Strange.
In Doctor Strange, she has, like, these... Like, in the movie, they kind of, like, mention, like, the idea of magic having consequences sometimes.
Yeah.
In the comics, they just go very direct with that. It has, like, physical, like, repercussions.
Like, you cast a spell, now you got magic boils on your ass.
You cast a spell, now you have to go vomit.
You cast a bunch of spells, now you can't eat regular food, you gotta eat weird, gross, interdimensional food.
You cast a really powerful spell, your eyes are bleeding.
Yeah. So, like, he goes through that, but he still thinks it's worth it, you know?
But, like, it doesn't seem that fun.
No, it's not fun.
Like, it's not like in the movies where he's like, woo, spells, isn't this cool and fun? It's just like, woo, spell, oh, God, I'm dying.
Yeah, but he still
I'm miserable and dying.
So it's like, even with, like, Doctor Strange, it's, like, debatable, but he leans towards the more optimistic side. But, like, with literally every other comic, with, like, Umbrella Academy... True Lies of the Fabulous Killjoys.
Okay, the Killjoys was a little more happy.
A little bit more.
It has a happy ending.
Yeah, but throughout the duration of it, and it's like every Marvel comic I've ever read except for the cheesy 70s ones, it's like, they're just, no one's happy. Everyone's sad.
If you want to get more specific than just, like, vaguely, like, Spider-Man's life sucks and Doctor Strange sucks a lot more, but he seems generally pretty pleased with his life somehow. Civil War is infinitely darker than the Civil War movie.
It's, like, way darker and more intense, but also, like, stupider. It's like stupider and
how?
It's like less stupid in a lot of ways, but also stupider in a lot of ways. Like the argument is way dumber in the comics than it is.
Is it?
Yeah.
I thought it was like more of an argument in the comic because, well, actually no.
Well, it's like more of an argument, but like in. I feel like in Civil War, the movie, it was a very split issue, and like it was like a matter of opinion, and it was like, you know, like nobody would ever be able to like it'd be very difficult to have like somebody get called around to the other person's way of thinking because it's very divisive, and like both have very solid points. Like, and that's true to an extent in the comic, but in the comic, it's just like, hey. Maybe superheroes should be registered and trained so a city doesn't get leveled like what happened before. And then it's like, yeah.
I feel like we should sum up this a bit. So in Civil War, the movie, there was the Sokovia Accords, which is basically like the Avengers cause a lot of like collateral damage when they're fighting people. So you're going to be under the jurisdiction of the government
and you will
prevent that.
And you will be called out to do things by the government, and you will not be allowed to do things unless the government tells you. You won't
be vigilantes anymore.
Yeah.
Which has some merit because, again, they cause a lot of collateral damage. But this is why to me, it always seemed pretty one-sided in the movie, to be honest. Because it's like on the argument for them, it's like they do cause a lot of collateral damage, and it would probably make people feel a lot better if they had like accountability or whatever. But then against them, it's like, well, the government telling us when to go in won't stop collateral damage. It'll be the exact same amount of collateral damage. The delay will take for over 100 governments to like fucking approve that. Well, I'm not sure if it has to go through all 100. Probably just whatever country they're in. It's
Yeah.
like the bureaucratic nightmare that would probably just let aliens just invade the Earth very quickly. It wouldn't, and again, it wouldn't do, like, jack shit. It wouldn't fix the problem.
Yeah, but
Like-
it's like, you know, you also, like, I feel like to a phrase what I was saying before, it's like, in the movie, even though obviously having the government in charge of superheroes is not a smart plan, you can see why the people that are for the Sokovia Accords are
you
for
can
it, and it's very,
empathize with
it's
them.
a very, like, there are good, solid, logical points on both sides of the argument, and it makes it a very split issue, but in the comic, it's like Steve's point of view is like way dumber.
Yeah, it's
because
like-
in the comic, basically, there's way more superheroes, and there's this one group of superheroes who are kind of like new to the game, and they have like a reality TV show. And while they're filming one of their episodes, they accidentally level a town. So people decide that it would be a good idea that in order to prevent this kind of like rookie mistake ends up killing a bunch of people, they wanted to make it so that a superhero would get registered and their powers would be put like on the register so people would like know who they are and what's going on.
Well, people wouldn't know who they are. That would be, like, kept, like, confidential. Unless they
Yeah.
said, like, yeah, you can tell people who I am.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
would
give
be
a shit.
kept confidential, but like basically you wouldn't like suddenly have this like dude coming around like fighting people, and you'd be like, who's that? What are they doing? What's going on? And be like, you'd know
basically-
them, you'd know who the superhero is and what their powers are, and they would receive training so that they can handle their powers
You
responsibly.
basically, it's kind of like getting a driver's license.
It'd be
You
like
have-
getting a it's basically like installing superhero license. Like, you have to be registered and you have to be trained.
So that
then
you won't mess, so it's less likely you'll mess up, and then if you do, you can be held accountable, because we know who you are.
And then, like, with Steve's point of view, he's pretty much like, I don't want that, because I never got to have a secret identity, and I want people to be able to have a choice whether they have one or not. Which, one, their identity can be kept confidential, like, the government would know, and that,
But his argument was, like, the government would never, like, he's like, dude, we're, like, facing supervillains every other day who hack into government, like, databases. I mean, basically his argument was that they'll never be able to, like, keep it that way. They'll never
Yeah.
be able to keep their promise that it'll be confidential.
And that's valid, but it's also, like, you know, like, everybody's doing pretty fine in the MCU and they don't have secret identities, and then it's also just, like, literally he's just, like, people's families and friends will get hurt if people are able to find out who they are, and it's like, that happens anyway. No one
Yeah.
knows who Peter Parker is, and it doesn't keep everyone he loves from being dead. Like, it doesn't, it's like, it's gonna happen anyway, Steve. Now everything's just garbage. Why shouldn't they be able to, like, just let them teach the kids how to use their fireball powers. Jesus Christ.
It's like in the movie it was like it felt like Cap was definitely right that the government should not be trusted with superheroes. Like, holy shit. Definitely, like, no. That's a no. But then in the comic, he was just like,
Like, his reasoning was way weaker. And then it was also, like, again, in the movie, you could see both sides of the argument, like, really well. And, like, even though you knew having the government be in charge of superheroes isn't a good plan, you could see why people would think it was a good plan. And you could see why the characters, and especially Tony, would, like, really desperately want that. And, like, you know that they don't like it, but they feel
And
like
you
it's the
also-
only way to stop people from dying.
and you also completely understand why, like, Steve and the people who sided with him definitely wouldn't want that. Because they're right, and it was a terrible plan. But
Yeah.
also because, you know, like the last Captain America movie was The Winter Soldier, where Steve literally learned that everything that, like, SHIELD, a government agency that was, like, he really trusted, was corrupted by Hydra, his worst enemy. So, like, so he no longer trusts any, like, institution or any, like, people with agendas, I think is what he said.
Yeah.
Because he was like, you can't, like, trust, like, you know, since there's, like, just, like, 10 of us Avengers and we're all just dedicated to, like, saving people, we can trust that no matter, like, who it is, where it is, what's happening, we'll do our best to go in, save people, and try to prevent casualties. Whereas the government has proven to be not that careful. Like, you know, in New York, when aliens invaded, and they were like, let's nuke the whole city. So then the Avengers had to fight off a bunch of aliens and stop the city from being nuked.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, you can tell why Tony would really want that, because he's always felt super responsible for, like, you know, the problems that superheroing causes, and he's just very, like, hounded by guilt, and he felt like that way would kind of, like, help take that burden off of him, and he would, like, feel more confident that he did everything that he could have done if there was more accountability. And then in the comics, like, it's pretty much like Tony's just like, Steve, please, I'm trying to talk to you. Don't you see that this would be good for people? And Steve's like, fuck you!
So there's that difference, is that it seems, it's like the comics and the movies, it's pretty, like, at least to me, I guess maybe not to everyone else, but to me at least it always seemed pretty, like, one-sided. Maybe it just... Maybe that's just me, though, but it's, like, opposite. It's, like, one-sided. Like, it's, like, in the comics, it's, like, yeah, Tony's definitely probably right about this. Like, there is, like, that risk involved, because, like, Captain America, he did bring up, like, a specific instance where it's, like a superhero whose identity got out and then his family was murdered.
Yeah.
So that it's, like... Yeah, you got a point there. I can see why maybe you, like, wouldn't want that. But then it's also, like, but, like, whole city leveled.
Yeah, it's, like, basically, I do feel like both are, like, kind of one-sided in opposite ways, but I feel like in the movie you can see both sides of the argument and see, like, both sides, how, like, logical they are and how, like, you know, you feel like both sides all could be right, almost.
Both sides are, like, reasonable.
Yeah,
vaguely.
both sides are very reasonable, and then in the comic, it's, like, one side, it's just like, dude, fucking stop, you being dumb. But, in the comics, it's way more intense. There's, like, it's like an actual war. It's like there are armies, there are, like, legions of people called Cape Killers, which is a really low blow, that was really bad. Why? And then...
That's one thing that maybe makes it seem a little, like, less one-sided, is that, like, the government handled it really badly.
Yeah.
They were just like, Cape Killers, that's a good idea.
Yeah, but it's like there are armies and battlefields and, like, casualties on both sides as opposed to, like, 12 people duking it out in a Walmart parking lot.
Yeah, it's like, here, it's an actual war that's, like, sweet, that's, like, having a huge effect on, like, the whole country and everything and every superhero, and then in the movie, it's just like, here's the Avengers punching it out in a parking lot.
Yeah.
Destroying a couple cars on accident.
Yeah.
There you go.
Merry Crisis.
War. Civil War.
Yeah. I feel like the reason it was called Civil War in the movie was, one, because it's vaguely based on the comic called Civil War, and then two, because they just couldn't, like, not make that joke, you know?
Haha, Captain America Civil War. You know, it's basically just Avengers 2.5 Civil War.
Yeah. It was like a civil war between the Avengers, as in there's a big divide that has consequences, but, like, it wasn't like a war. And in the comics, it was a war.
And it was a lot darker. And oh yeah, Captain America dies at the end of Civil War in the comics.
Yeah, they don't, like, show you how he got captured or anything. It's, like, literally just, like, they just tell you in like 2 paragraphs before the last issue, oh yeah, and by the way, he got captured. I know it feels like nothing of importance has happened this whole time and we've just kind of been meandering, and now suddenly everything has picked up, but we're not going to show you that. Anyway, he's captured, and then like the whole last issue was just really sad.
Yeah, it's like he got, Captain America was like captured for committing treason, I guess. And then someone just shot him. Some fucking guy.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was, like, some supervillain or something, like...
Someone who had not been
controlled someone. Someone who, like, wasn't, like, it wasn't, like, they executed him or something. Like, he was just... he was just, like, in prison, and then, like, while he was in prison, someone just, like, shot him.
Yeah. And, like, the whole last
and then he was
issue
dead.
was basically, like... Tony saying that he was sorry to Steve and like trying to explain his reasoning and being like it wasn't worth this, and then you find out at the end that he's fucking dead.
So there's that.
So that was really sad, and I hated that.
I'm glad
Give Tony a fucking break, you monsters.
Give Captain America a break too. It turns out though he didn't actually like die. He was just they like resurrected him like 10 issues later because comic books. But you know,
yeah,
it's still sad.
It's still sad, yeah.
So there's that. That is a lot darker.
It really was.
It's like really sad. Like, you know, Civil War, the movie, had like some pretty lasting consequences. Like the Avengers basically just fall apart and don't get back together until like Infinity War, and even then they technically don't get back together because like half of them never like meet.
Yeah.
So it's like so it had some lasting consequences, but it was like, you know, by the end of it, you're like, they'll make up eventually.
Yeah.
Like it was like they established that they didn't hate each other, and then they were like, and they'll do it. They'll get a hang of it eventually.
They'll become friends again eventually. They both realized that they both did some shit things and that the other one does have a point, even if they do disagree with each other.
And I'm like, I don't know whatever happened to like the Accords. I guess the apocalypse happened, and then people decided they didn't give a shit more.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because like they never like speak of them again.
They kind of did it in Infinity War, because that one dude was like,
you can't do that, and they were like, yeah, fuck off.
They were like, you can't do that, and also you wanted criminals, and they were like, fuck you, the world's ending, and the only one that had like any chance, like the only one that was like, you know, not a war criminal that had any chance of getting anything done is just like missing, so like, we're just gonna handle this and y'all can deal with it. You can tell us no, but
I guess they just decided after that, it was like, those Accords were really, like, hard to enforce, aren't they?
Yeah.
So there's that.
The only point I have left is about secret identities. Because,
yeah.
like, in the comics, they have them, they're important. It's a big thing, especially in, like, Spider-Man. Like, they mentions it a lot. It comes into play a lot. And then in the MCU, it's just like, who fucking needs them? They're dumb as hell. Why would Tony's bodyguard literally never be seen in the same room as him? Dumbass.
Tony's bodyguard. Yeah, Iron Man is Tony's bodyguard, who's never in the same room as him, ever. And also, how does that even work for secret? Because the point, generally, is to, like, make sure that you can, like, live your, like, fucking life. Without getting attacked by supervillains while you're at, like, your day job.
Yeah.
And, like, also to protect, like, the people you know and care about. But if you're saying Iron Man is your bodyguard, then anyone who wants to go after Iron Man is just gonna go after you anyway. Because they're like, it's his job. He'll show up if I attack Tony Stark.
If I attack Tony Stark or some of Tony Stark's friends or family, then Iron Man will have to show up.
Because it's his job.
Because that's his job.
So
That's what he
like,
does for a living.
And I like how in the movie, like, that's the excuse they go with, and it, like, works somehow. But, like, in the movies, they were like, Tony was literally like, are you sure that's what you want to go with? That's really stupid.
And then he was just
No
like,
one's
anyway,
gonna
I'm
believe
Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. really
Shaping the
shaping
future
the
of the
MCU.
MCU by just
From the
being
beginning to the end, man.
well, basically just being like he made that line up, and then they liked it, and then they were all like, "Well, if he doesn't have one, I guess we can't really justify anyone else having one except for Peter, I guess, because he's like a teenager." So
Yeah.
that one makes a little more sense.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah,
I'm gonna end this so that I can turn the fan on in our room because I'm absolutely baking alive.
It's like 100 degrees where we live.
Yeah.
Heat wave, baby.
It's like 100 degrees with humidity. It's a little bit less than
Yeah.
that in actuality, but it
gives a
feels
shit?
like it's like 107, and that's what's important. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed. We just kind of wanted to ramble about things we like more. We just wanted to talk about Marvel more and talk about the Umbrella Academy more because, like, that's all that we care about now. So
Alternate name of this channel is We Ramble About Things We Like.
Yes. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Peace.
Bye.